is working to make improvements to a major Charleston County highway that they say will be big victories for both drivers and nearby businesses. But some neighbors in the Phillips community worry it's going to cut into their land. News 2's Riley Benson spoke to those behind the Highway 41 improvement project. Riley, they have been looking into the plan.
I'm mad about that. It's like, I don't matter. One, people say, well, ain't nothing but a bunch of old trailers over here. Why not run through there? Well, that's somebody home.
I'm just a little disappointed, you know, because things are changing around you and there's nothing you could do about it.
They need to preserve and protect what they already own. To realize that God is not making any more land.
Charleston, South Carolina, voted the best city in the U.S. for the fourth time since 2016 and the best city in the world in the same year. Chosen for its landmarks, culture, cuisine, friendliness, and shopping, the Holy City topped #2 New Orleans on the U.S. list. But with all its accolades, there are still significant issues. Its residents, specifically the Gullah Geechee people, the descendants of enslaved African Americans that built the country, faced with their interest in land ownership. A fight that can be traced to the early days of Reconstruction and continues into today. So Don, where are we at right now?
We're on Parker Bridge. This was the only link between Parker's Island and the Phillips community.
Okay.
Now it's Rivertown. Before this was a pecan plantation, and they made bricks over here.
Oh, okay.
That's how the Hallback made their money.
Okay.
From bricks in the pecan groves.
Now I'm having a hard time, Don, imagining y'all playing in this water though. Y'all used to jump in this water?
Yes, we used to play in it, but the water didn't look like this.
Okay.
All this came after they built the golf course in Rivertown.
Got you.
You know, and what we did, we used to crabbing off the bridge, fish, shrimping, you know, right out here.
This was almost like a community point, like everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This was a rite of passage. You come and learn how to swim over this bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it had all the necessities. In the summertime, you plant, you have your garden,
Right.
and you utilize the creek.
Right.
In the wintertime, you go over here, you gather wood, because everybody, you know, burn wood, heat,
Right.
and you hunt. So it's you always had food on the table from the landscape.
Right.
You know, like everybody now have, well, you're going back organic. Well,
Right.
we was doing organic, you know, back in the day when it wasn't cool to be organic.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah. My name is Richard Habersham. Some people in the community call me Don. I'm the president of the Phillips Community Association. We've been in existence now since 1999. Okay. And that's a history by itself. We got started because of water tank. They wanted to put a water tank in our community that Dunes West didn't want. So we got organized to fight water tank. We lost, but we got credibility about it from the county and from Mount Pleasant.
Okay. So tell me about the history, because you told me that this goes back a long time.
Yes.
Tell me about the history of this place.
Well, the earliest date we have of the Phillips community is in the late 1600s when Sarah and Robert Fenwick got a King's grant and got 550 acres, which now is the Phillips community. And from Sarah and Robert, they didn't have no kids, so they deeded the property to their niece, Sarah Hex. She married to John Rutledge. You know, you have John Naval Rutledge, signed the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution. Yeah. This is their birthplace.
Okay.
They got this plantation through their mother. It was Sarah Hex that owned this, but John Rutledge married to Sarah Hex. John Rutledge sold it to the Hallbacks. In 1875, Elizabeth Hallback sold the property to my ancestors and the founding members of the Phillips community.
And so that's about your family really goes back to about the 1800s.
1875, I can date it back to my great-grandfather, Hercules Geddes, and he was one of the founding members of the Phillips community.
We took a walk with Mr. Habersham to discover the richness of this historic community.
Now, we got a tomb in the middle of the community. We haven't found out exactly who it was. We were just thinking that it probably was the Fenwicks. Yeah, you can see the top part of the tomb. See the tomb? See the tomb right there? You can see it?
Oh, this is?
Yeah, this is the tomb. Now, when I was younger, it was a door. It was a wooden door in the front, and the whole thing was enclosed.
So what was it like as a child growing up in the Phillips community?
I didn't know I was poor until I left there. I tell you the truth, that's what it was. Because, you know, answer that you was hungry or you didn't have, because everybody had business saying. You had a roof, you had kids, you had siblings, you had cousins, and you had the neighbors and everything. And everybody was your parents around here, no matter what house you went to. So your parents always knew what you did and where did you go to.
Right. So tell me about the people that are moving in, because Mount Pleasant has changed dramatically over the last 30, 40 years. What is the Phillips community like today? Who makes up this community?
The community is still about 90% black. Okay. But you have Caucasian moving daily. Because like one of my neighbors say, well, they prefer living over here because they don't want to go in the subdivision. If you look at this house over here to your up in front, they just moved here about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're from Canada.
Oh, from Canada?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're like the area, they have no restriction, see out the little fence.
Yeah.
And notice now, they have a fence, but they don't have a privacy fence.
Right.
So they moved in as members. Yeah. A lot of people move in, and the first thing they put up a privacy fence. They're here, but they're not here. Mm. You know, they don't want to be a part of the community.
Right. Do you feel like people still, want that community sense?
Yeah. The older folks, like my age, or even in people in the 40s, it's still like sense of the community. Because we have some youngsters, they want to come back, but they can't.
Right. So why can't they come back?
No property.
According to the town of Mount Pleasant, the average home in the year 2000 was valued at $185,500. The U.S. Census 2019 data values today's average home at $441,600. The rise in home values parallel with a steady decrease to an already vulnerable African American population and an increase to Mount Pleasant's overall white population.
That's out of range for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Even I talked to some of my white neighbors and everything. They said that if they had to buy a home now, they couldn't afford to live over here.
Right. And what's making the price jump up so high?
That quality of life. Everybody think that Mount Pleasant is the best thing since sliced bread. Because you notice over here again, you close to somebody, but you're not up on somebody. Right. You got space enough to do different things with your property.
But you're also close enough that if you need to get to town center or downtown, it ain't like no hour-long drive.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, right. We're close enough. And that's what everybody wants. It's like this guy, and he's actually a friend of ours. He's an architect. And he told us years ago, he said, well, Rich, don't think it's a racial thing, because it's not. It's an economic thing. Because you got people who got more money than you want your property.
Right.
And that's the truth.
Right.
And that's the way we look at it. Right. They want what we have because they see that we have something good.
Right. Do you feel like it's just economics? Do you feel like it's just about money?
Yep, I think it's more about money.
Okay. A closer examination of wealth finds staggering evidence of racial disparities. At $171,000, the net worth of a typical white family is nearly 10 times greater than that of a black family. This gap reveals the effects of accumulated inequality and discrimination, as well as differences in power and opportunity that can be traced back to this nation's inception, efforts that have been impeding communities like Phillips in a host of ways. Beginning with 246 years of chattel slavery, the congressional mismanagement of the Freedmen's Savings Bank, leaving 61,000 depositors with losses of nearly $3 million in 1874, followed by violent massacres decimating thriving black communities such as Tulsa's Greenwood District and the Wilmington, North Carolina community. Discriminatory policies throughout the 20th century, including the Jim Crow era's black codes, strictly limiting opportunity in many southern states. The GI Bill, the New Deal's Fair Labor Standards Act's exemption of domestic, agricultural, and service occupations, and redlining. Wealth was taken from these communities before it had the opportunity to grow, creating a society where the people with more money, rather than the lifelong residents of the Phillips community, have a habitual advantage, while the black communities surrounding them remain vulnerable.
Look at like that road situation over here.
I'm glad you brought, because I want to bring that up. So talk to us about 41. We've been talking about 41, but now we can see it. It's a 2-lane highway now, but if it were to extend to 4 or 5 lanes, how close would it be to this house?
All right, the 5-lane, if you look at the plan, most of the expansion will be on this side.
Okay.
And from the plan what I'm saying, it'll be 15 feet away from this house.
15 feet from this
house. 15 feet.
That'll take us to what? About this tree, this car?
Yeah, but this car here. You're looking at, all this will be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the trail over here and the little old store,
right.
All that'll be right up next to them.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. So you see, who wants to live that close? And you hear how noisy this road is now.
Right.
And you have 4 lane of traffic.
Right.
And they said they'll speed up the traffic. Other safety part, speed limit is 45 miles an hour as it is. The average speed is about 55 coming through here. So you got 4 lanes of road, you know that's going to increase the speed limit.
Right.
Now, if you look at this is a cousin, that's a first cousin, that's a first cousin, that's a first cousin.
Okay.
All these are family members.
Right.
So
you are literally driving a wedge between families.
Yeah. Yes. And you make one community, 2 communities, because the people on that side is not going to come on this side. Over a period of time, people are going to disappear because the next generation, they don't want to live by a highway. The thing with 41 started back in 2000 with the town of Mount Pleasant and a long-range plan. When we found out about it, we stepped up to the plate and we designed our own plan. What we came up with a 3-lane road. You have 3 lanes, 1 lane going south, 1 going north, and you have that center lane, that turn lane. Because right now the problem on 41 is making a left-hand turn. Another part, you got a lot of kids in the community. It's hard enough to go across 2 lanes of traffic. So now if you do a 4-lane traffic, that's a death trap.
Yeah.
That's a death trap for our kids. Like one lady in Doonesville, I put in the newspaper a few weeks ago, saying that, it'll be unsafe if you run the 4-lane through their neighborhood. What they're saying, our kids don't matter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, put it over in Phillip, their kids don't matter, but my kid does matter.
Right.
You know, and if they put it through there and go to 7A, which will go through Dunwest Boulevard and go around Phillip, and don't touches nobody home. And the closest they say they get to a property line is about 50 feet, and then they'll have a sound wall barrier.
Yeah.
So the safety issue is already built into that. Here, it wouldn't be no sound barrier.
Right.
Here's another part to it. A lot of people make a whole lot of money, but they make enough money to sustain themselves. So now, you imagine, you may take someone making $15, $20 an hour who got a home, they're living, got a quality of life. You take their home away from them. So what you just did, just throw them in poverty because now they got to pay rent. City of Charleston said they got an affordable home. A 1-bedroom, that's $1,100.
Right.
$1,100.
Right.
How many people think that they will make $15 to $20 an hour going to afford $1,100, got a kid, got to pay a car note, rent, and all this other stuff.
Right.
So you just push them into poverty. You know, then you have to figure out, is I'm going to eat or pay my rent? I'm going to take my kid to the doctor, or I could throw a bandage on them. You know, all that comes from that road. Mount Pleasant don't care, and some of the people in Dune West just don't care. Only thing they care about themselves. If you create the problem, you solve it on your property. Don't solve it on my back. And that's our thing is. Look at 17. All along 17, there was homes. I grew up, there was community homes over there. You don't see that no more.
There's a Home Depot where Lang used to be at.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And are you afraid that if this road continues to expand, that your community is going to go that way?
The same way. Because we've seen it.
Heirs property is a significant issue in South Carolina, especially in the coastal communities. With an increase in commercial developed interests, heirs property owners have lost their land for lack of clear title or timely tax payments. Most heirs property in the Low Country is land that was acquired by African Americans after emancipation. Much of this land has been passed down through generations without a will, so that the land is owned in common by multiple heirs. This unstable form of ownership puts this land at high risk for loss because any heir can sell his or her percentage of ownership to another who can face the sale of the entire property in court, losing not only the family land, but family history.
We do have a museum in here, and it's not open right now. But this is where the 54th Regiment came on Soligree Island. This is where they stayed overnight. They had camp here, and this is where they stayed before they moved on. But they started here from the water. They came up from the water, and I think they end up on Johns Island from here.
Soligree, a small coastal community on James Island, famous for its historic Mosquito Beach, a recreational oasis created by and for local African Americans, and one of only 6 beaches accessible to the African American community in the Charleston area during the segregated days of Jim Crow. The beach, whose boardwalk pavilion, restaurant, stores, music club, and hotels once attracted people from all over the Low Country and beyond, is just a piece of what makes Soligree so special.
The Soligree community is an island bordered by the Folly, some people say Folly, but we Soligree River on the front end, and on the back end we have the Holland Creek River, and we end up on the Stunno River, where we have a boat landing and a newly paved and built pavilion on that end. We are a community of families, and one way or another all of us are connected. The Richardsons, the Walkers, the Wilders, the Browns and the Backmans, the Greens, the Chaverses, Wallaces are up there also, the Lafayette, the Gilliards, Singleton, and also the Grants that was here all of my lifetime. And so that's who we are. We are one man's children. There was an Englander that moved to the Charleston area in the 1800s. His name was Sol Legree. This land was actually abandoned because the white community found that it was hard to grow anything here. So in the essence of it, it was sold to 5 men, and those 5 men sold this portion to a family of freedmen. And so that's the Soligree community.
So talk about what Soligree was like when you were growing up.
It was paradise, and still is to me. Paradise because in this community, everybody was family and still is, and nobody went hungry. We were taught the morals of life, not only by our parents, but any house that you passed in walking down the street, you had to govern yourself accordingly because those family members were watching out for you, and we were taught that we did not just represent ourselves, we represented our family, because the elders may not have known our names, but they knew who we are by the shape of our face and the structure of our body. They knew who we were. They could identify us, and they never really called your name. They just said, "Hey, you Tim and Joe Grant, come over here." You know, because that's what how they identified me. We really didn't even experience fenced yards. People may have had hedges, but you know, people left and came back home, and then they put up these big fences, and meaning that everybody else had to stay out or ask permission to come in. when we were accustomed to walking through each other's yard without a problem. So
Speaking of this village, when did you start noticing this village changing?
the transition of change began to happen once a lot of the family members began to sell out their property. And we identified a problem in that because they didn't have the same connection to the land that many of us who stayed here did. So it didn't bother them to sell it, and it disturbed us at the core to know that they were just blatantly selling it off. It makes me feel very hurt and disappointed that so many of our children don't have the same connection to the land that we do and don't recognize the value of it. So my thoughts are, why are you going to sell land and go rent from somebody else? Well, that money don't last very long, you know. When people hear a figure like, oh, we're going to get $250,000 or $300,000 from the sale of this property, but divide that by 8 or even 10, you know, and because they had larger families back then. It's a hurtful thing because the people were holding on to the land for them to come back home and live here, and to know that they don't want to do that. It gives us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Gentrification is definitely, you know, setting in from all ends and the middle. Now, do the residents really understand what is happening when you start selling your land like that? Probably not. But they're selling the land maybe because the kids are not coming back. However, when the land is sold to somebody, then you are not sure what they're going to do with it. And if they come in with a subdivision, so that starts, you know, at one end, and you could add on, and you go on down. For instance, at the beginning of Solidarity Road, we have a new development there. I think it's about 36 homes that they built over there, Kings Flat. And further down, we have Brown Pelican is another community that has been built on Solidarity Road. And then when you go to the end, you do see a totally different group of people there. Next thing you know, the community might be gone. So that's something that we don't want to see happen. We are trying to educate people, the children mostly, and grandchildren of the original property owners, to let them see they have some value in the land, and why not keep the land and you spread it out among your family members, because God is not making any more land.
So this land that we're on right now, about how many heirs you think are tied into this property right here?
Besides my father's 9 sisters and brothers and 3 more cousins, I'd say about 12.
12 of y'all. And does your land go from that water all the way to the dam?
Yes.
Yes. What do you feel is the disconnect between your generation and maybe the younger Richardsons in terms of, like, you know, having a value and a love for this land? What do you think is the disconnect between the two generations?
Really teaching them the value of the land. The generation now don't see the prosper of this land and what it values, because they into a different life. When we are the adults now know that our value of our property, and would like to keep it in the family because of the beauty of it and what our ears, our ancestors have developed it for us. Why can't we keep it like that?
And is someone in your generation teaching that to the younger generation?
We are trying.
Yeah.
We are trying.
So
We
we just
teach
need a
our
little bit.
children, and our children teach our grandchildren.
Yeah.
The value of our great-grandfather, our grandfather. This property is beautiful. Don't let it go.
This property that we're on now, whose family does this belong to?
The Singleton family,
This is y'all. So from here back across the street?
way back to the dike, back to the water, from water to water.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, my grandmother, Sarah Singleton, she owns about 8 acres of land on that island over there,
Oh, what island is that?
Dixon Island.
Dixon Island, okay. I mean, seeing this is so beautiful. Why do you think that there are younger people my age who may have ties to this land that don't want this? Like, why wouldn't they want this?
Well, I think the younger generation didn't grow up in this area, so they don't have a feel for the value of the land. And another thing is economics. It has become very expensive to develop property over here now because we're in a flood zone. It's very expensive and a lot of young people can't afford it, so then they tend to go further inland where properties are more affordable to build. And I think that's one of the main reasons. But we have been blessed here because all of our properties that you can see around us has been inhabited by descendants of our parents and grandparents.
Prophetess, what do you think?
I agree with her because economics plays a great deal in it. It costs a lot to build houses over here. So it is ways that, in a sense, it kind of bind you in terms of having to build your property yourself. And one thing I'm grateful for is that our forefathers is that they left this inheritance. And just like the Word of God tells us to leave an inheritance for your children and your children's children. And that is what they have done. And it saddens me when the property is being sold, because to me what they did for us, you can't put a monetary value on it. And I think some goes back to in educating them the importance of what was given to us.
Edisto Island is grown, but it's not going to be rapid growth, simply because we don't have the water and the sewer.
Is it still a bunch of people still trying to buy property?
People still trying to buy, and every time you look around, in fact, Edisto Beach is just about sold out.
Edisto Island, home of the Black King of Edisto, Henry Hutchinson. Serving in the Union Army during its occupation of the island, Hutchinson became a leader in the black community. A well-respected community leader, Hutchinson built and operated the island's first black-owned cotton gin in 1900 and advocated for black land ownership, helping others acquire property. He and his wife Rosa lived in what is known as the Hutchinson House until he was murdered by a white man from Wadmalaw Island in 1940. But his legacy of land ownership remained a staple of the Edisto community, though it faces its own issues involving heirs property. Tell us about the church, or the history of the church.
The church built in 1818 by a slave owner by the name of Hepzibah Townsend, was given to the black in the early 1800s, was 1818. If you look at it, this part here was built first, and then this part here was added on.
But Hepzibah Townsend married the plantation owner here. She was 16, and when the war started, they didn't know what was going to happen during the Civil War, so they sent her here to Edisto to keep her safe. Her husband wouldn't agree to build this church for her. He was a member of the White Presbyterian Church. He didn't stop her, because he probably figured she would never get it built. Members of our church actually built this church. The slaves actually built this church. There's more of us here than them. White people usually came here during the wintertime because of the mosquitoes. They're scared of getting malaria and all that other stuff. So this island was populated mostly by black people. Now, there were a few people here, of course, because of the plantation owners, so they did have churches here. But after the war started, then they were fearful of being here, especially when I think when they got to the Charleston area, scared they were coming here. So they left the island, so black people thought that, okay, we're here, this is ours now. Everything on it is ours.
And now we're here to talk about heirs property, and what I want to know is if that's an issue that some of your parishioners are facing.
Absolutely. Yes, it is.
And have they told you what some of their issues are as it relates to this heirs property thing?
Well, it's grown so with so many people involved, it's so hard to break it loose. I can attest to the fact there because back in 1972, we had to go to work and take care of owls. And it was quite a mess.
So where are we at right now?
We are off of Indigo Hill Road. This is the Burnell property. Not only this little area, but all the way back to the woods, way back there. They also own this property over here and that piece over there. And the reason I know this property is because my aunt married into this family, and that was their house over there. You can't see it now, but their house is over there. And this was Martha Burnell, Martha, you know. This is his family's property, and he was married to a Fillmore, so they have more property in what we call clock, straight back in the back. But that's the reason I know it now. This is Mrs. Mimi Murray Wright. She died recently, within the last 3 weeks. She passed, and that's her sister, Mrs. Ruthie Robinson.
Right.
And that's one of the nephews that stays over here sometimes during the week, on the weekends.
And this is all the Burnell
all
land?
All this is Burnell's land.
Do y'all find that some of the places we've gone and interviewed people, they're saying they're having a very hard time of getting the children or the grandchildren to come back and either stay on the land or at least own it and not sell it? Are y'all seeing that happen over here as well?
That happens, you know, like maybe when we were younger, maybe when we got out of high school and went to school somewhere else, and then we end up settling in a city somewhere because it was so difficult to find a decent paying job here. And most people like myself, you know, we come back after we've retired from jobs, you know, but that is a problem. And then like those children, if they have never grown up here and didn't come here that often, you know, they not particularly want to stay here. There's not enough here.
Right. So they're heirs, but they don't have a connection because they might not have grown up here.
Well, they don't have an emotional connection.
Yeah.
You
An
know,
emotional connection, yes.
Yeah, they don't have that, and so they, you know, they'll sell it.
Yeah.
You know, our problem is what we have tried to do, and especially those older people who are by themselves. You know, if they let the churches know that they, you know, before they pass on, they could actually leave the property to the church, or the church could buy the property from them while they're living, so that they, you know, proper documentation, of course. And then the church could then have that property, you know, for somebody like me who has no children, you know. I would just leave my property to the church.
That's actually pretty smart. Instead of just letting the land go, willing it to the church. It helps the church out too, because then the church looks like it has a wider portfolio. They have more property under their name.
Exactly. You know.
That's a really good. Have y'all already started doing that, or is that just an idea you thought of?
It's been mentioned.
Yeah. That's a really good. Have y'all already started doing that, or is that just an idea you thought of?
It's been mentioned once or twice, you know, and you know, we encourage people to do it. You know, the other people do it all the time. You know, but what it is with us is we don't want nobody to know our business, especially when we can't pay the tax.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, can you help me, and this is what I'll do.
Right.
You know, I'll leave this to you if you all pay the tax so I can stay home, especially if I have nobody to leave it to.
Pastor, you want to say something?
Yeah, and my encouragement to people is that rather than let the tax people take it, I know some people might not like this, but I say sell it first. At least you get something. But if you let the tax people take it, you get nothing.
Right.
Absolutely nothing.
Right.
And I do encourage it. But what Sister Smith was just saying, we have been encouraging that, but we still not have come to that point.
Yeah. I know for a fact that South Carolina ETV, they offer that as an option for people who want to sponsor or support their radio station. Right. Is they say like, will your money to us when you die, or property to us when you die, and people do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, people do it.
Well, this is an island, and because it is, you know, we got so much more people here than ever. I'm sure we've been outnumbered by now. We just can't see it. If you go down some of these little tiny 2-lane roads and you burst out and there's all these people, you know, and see what happens too sometimes is They go, you know, people have friends in the tax office, and they find out whose taxes are behind. Not us now. We don't have that kind of pull. And then they'll wait and either get it through not paying your taxes, or they'll offer you what seems like a lot of money, but in fact isn't.
Right.
We've known that to happen to some people on the island. You know, they thought they were getting a lot of money, but in fact, what ended up happening was they sold a lot for the price they gave them for the whole acreage. And so the children that go and then they live in the city and then they start having children of their own, they may come down there once in a while and say, yeah, we from. But they don't have any intention of coming back here. Then the old people that's left on the property and their children out here, they come home maybe Christmas for a couple of days. You know, well, that's our land. You know, they struggle a whole thinking their children may come back, and they have no intention of coming back. And so let
Charlotte to come to
exactly. Well, no, you know, because anybody tell you, well, you know, you got to go so far to go to the stores, you know, and this kind of thing, you know. But you know, when I'm lived and born right here on this island, you know, and you know, now that I can't come back over here, I'm saying to myself, oh my goodness, it's too far to get the thing. Something happened, and a lot of people have concern about hospitalization, emergencies, you know, how far it is to get. But now the people who've been here all the time and only go to Charleston on the weekends every now and then, they're not worried about that. They get care. You know, they do get care, but I just wish people would be more concerned about that, especially for the old people who can't pay the taxes. You know, and instead of saying, why don't we sell the property to the church? You know, they don't think about that. Either that, I don't think we have the means to purchase. You know, and that's not always correct.
I think this is just a lack of communication, right? I don't think people know that that's something they can do, that they can sell their property to the church or will it to the church. You know, you're the first person that I've ever heard, and all these conversations we had, you're the first person that's ever said that. So I'm sure there's other people who may be willing to do that, but don't know that that's a thing that they can do.
Gentrification is knocking on the door, and we're working hard to keep it out because we have people coming in. Of course, they want to buy. You see people riding through all the time trying to look, and people want what we have. So, and I think right now, as a community, we need to see the value in what we have and hold on to it.
This portion of Snouten is my family, the German family, Track, another heir's property. It's been in the family for generation. And further up, you can see some docks over there. That's Reverend Stokes. That's his family tract of property. And we just left the Grants tract. And like I said, this has been in the family for generations, and you can see why it's valuable.
One of the last remaining African American communities in Mount Pleasant, surrounded by waterfront property, Snouten sits in the most expensive area to live in South Carolina. The value of land ownership is something that has been preached in the community and is taking hold in a new generation.
Snouten was in existence since Reconstruction. Former slaves and others, they either bought some of the land or some was given, I guess, by former slave owners or however they got it. And then families began, you know, to build homes and have children. And soon everybody kind of became related because this one married this one and that. So we're all pretty much related here. We share a deep history.
What I really, really like about Snouten is they're very supportive of each family, is very supportive. And whenever something happened to one, everyone else is there. And I love it for that reason. That's why I came back home, because this is where I was born. But I left for over 30 years, came back.
Now, as time's gone by, it's gone from a sleepy town to the most expensive city to live in South Carolina. Has that affected your community at all?
I think it has. Well, Snouten, I guess we're one of the last remaining strongholds as you consider black communities, because a lot of our black communities are being gentrified. So whereas, as you can hear the traffic noise all around us, we couldn't hear that traffic noise once upon a time. I remember when I was little, because none of this stuff was here, if we heard an ambulance or a fire truck, everybody would follow the fire truck or get on the phone. Where did that fire truck go? Right. Now, we don't pay it any attention because it goes by all the time. But I think one of the impacts is that because Mount Pleasant is considered one of the fastest growing cities in South Carolina, the average home that they're building now is probably about $400,000. We have people coming in, of course, they want to buy. You see people riding through all the time trying to look. And one of the things that I've learned too when it comes to black communities, where they want to try to get our land, but they want to buy it for cheap, you know. So we need to know the value in ourselves.
And why this is so valuable, it stops right here. You're looking at creek and marshland leading to the Wando River, and majority of this property probably for the 5-7 mile stretch belongs to people in the community. This tract is probably one of the largest tracts still owned predominantly by the black family members that lived in this area since slavery. This is a classic example with the house being built behind us, family members passing that ownership of the property down to through the generation.
I got you.
But no, man, this is it, man, to get family back here.
Yeah.
Keeping in the family 100%.
So dope, bro. This is really...
For my ancestors to get to Charleston, there's some, just on the other side of that, they would cut the palmetto tree down and lay it across the marsh until they actually get down to the river. And they took their goods in and out of Snowden via boat and rode all the way to the markets in Charleston.
Did y'all utilize this land? Did you play in the water, fish in the water? Like, what did y'all do with it?
Absolutely. I mean, we fished, played in the water, went swimming in the water. Like I said, Hugo took that dock out. That's the dock that I remember. At the head of that dock is where we swam. There's a lot of clam beds in here that, yes, some family members still come in here and dig clams up out of the area, clams and mussels, as well as crabs. So you know, they provided seafood not only for my family, but for pretty much all the families that live in the area. And like I said, the noise you're hearing, when I was growing up, we didn't have the boats, the party boats like you can see over here in the river. That's just encroachment from the development here.
Okay. So I can definitely see why somebody could look at all of this and want in. Has there been hardships in terms of people being able to keep land in the family, or has that been kind of an easy transition?
Well, not too much of a hardship. As a matter of fact, it goes back down to the years, especially after we developed this community organization, that all of our meetings, most of them, we used to encourage the people that if you got some property that you want to sell, use word of mouth within the community so that it could stay in the community. But I might add, it's bounded. We have like Lone Point subdivision, classic development, you know, with houses $400,000+ on one side, and then on the other side you have Bell Hall, same picture view that sits on the Wando River. And then in the front part of us, there's Knee Farm, been there for a long time. So you can see that we're surrounded by heavy, expensive development. And fear is that those development could cause taxes to rise into this area, and that's where the word gentrification drifts in, because really they can push your tax so high that you can't afford to stay in it.
We've been impacted by people trying to come in and buy and change it and move in. And right now we also, even with the sewer issue, most of the community has sewer. I would say maybe 100 homes or so still have septic tanks. So we're right now with the town of Mount Pleasant, you know, trying to force us into the town so that we can get sewer. So we're faced with things of that nature. So we're working hard on that as well right now.
So from your perspective, what's the benefit of not being associated with the town of Mount Pleasant?
Well, I think by not being associated with the town, it's because they have so many strategies that they would put on us to make it harder for us, because the family here is like low to moderate income, and they would send everything up so high, and the people would end up losing their land. That's why I'm not interested in annexing into the town because of that reason. They just want your land for nothing. They think that you shouldn't even know anything about how to maintain your property. But we're not going to just let them come in and fine us for any little thing and then end up taking our land.
This basket is based on your design, right?
Right.
You designed that basket.
Yeah. The hand on there is Nakia Wakefall. That's her hand, but the basket is mine.
When you talk about how long it takes to make something, you told me y'all don't measure it in hours, you measure in days.
Right.
Okay. How many days did it take you to make that?
That fan basket took me, it was about a week.
Okay. And this, tell me about this basket.
This is my mom's.
It's your mom's?
Yeah.
And this is the last basket
The last basket she made.
And you said this took her about 2 days? How long do you think it would take you to make this?
A week.
A week? Your mom was a pro.
Yes, she was. My great-grandmother, she had made a basket in 1929. American Craft Museum in New York. They had it on loan for a year.
Okay.
And it's in their catalog.
And you have some stuff in museums as well, right?
Yeah.
Where's your stuff at?
The Smithsonian.
All right. All right. So when we talk about the displacement of this culture, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of years of history and skill just wiped off.
Yes.
Yeah. Sweetgrass baskets were brought to America by enslaved Africans from the rice coast of West Africa in the 17th century. Stolen from their land for their knowledge and their experience in the cultivation of rice, the first known baskets in the Low Country were fanner baskets, used in winnowing, production, and processing of rice, one of the money crops of the time. Following emancipation, sweetgrass baskets transformed from a hard-working farm staple to a high-performing earner for these black artisans. Setting up shop along Highway 17 in Mount Pleasant, basket weaver Ida Jefferson Wilson became the very first black stand along the 17 stretch. With the current expansion of the highway, the culture faces the risk of being removed from the area, another impediment to the cultural and economic stability of the black community.
The baskets was adopted by the state of South Carolina as the handicraft for the state of South Carolina.
The handicraft.
The handicraft.
And so the handicraft of the state of South Carolina that was originally really commercialized here by our people may not have a home after a while.
If things keep going the way it is, it might.
Wow.
Right.
But basket weaving wouldn't be the first pillar of the community to be lost in Mount Pleasant. Lang High School, established in January 1866 for freedmen following the Civil War. Known as the Lang Industrial School, the institution grew and offered 7 years of schooling. In 1953, the school moved to Highway 17 North at 6 Mile Road, where it graduated students from the 12th grade from 1954 through 1970. In 2020, the historic building was tore down to make way for a Home Depot.
Now you went to Lang, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, when did you go to Lang?
I graduated Lang High School in 1962.
1962. Okay.
This is our original arch from the old Lang High School. The school faced Highway 17. And when they built this store, they were able to keep it intact for us and preserve it, and they brought it over here. Lang was established in 1866 by the Quakers in the old village of Mount Pleasant. And in 1953, they built a new school at this site here in 6 Mile. We tried to get it, but we couldn't. And they tore it down, but we still have the name because they had made this a middle school after they closed it down as a high school.
So let's go back and talk a little bit about this widening project that you're concerned about. When did you start hearing, because this has been widened a couple times, right?
Yeah, it's been widened a couple times. And in 2006, when I served on the Comprehensive Plan Committee, we gave them the plans that help alleviate the traffic around the community, but they sat on it. I said they didn't want to accept our ideas. Now we're back to the drawing board again because people were displaced because of it. A lot of the basket makers were displaced because of it. And we don't want to see that again happen to our community. We would like to hold on to whatever we have left.
So what happens if this gets widened again? What happens to those basket makers?
They'll be lost. If you don't have a piece of property right on Highway 17, then you don't have no place to sell your basket except the city of Charleston, which is the city market or the visitor center. And they do have places for us there. They always accommodate us.
Right. But this is your home, so you shouldn't have to go.
We shouldn't have to go out of our home.
Exactly. And there's been any talks with the town of Mount Pleasant about, you know, as they're growing, to still make a place a cultural home for y'all?
Some of the companies come in and do that, just like Home Depot. You see they built these two, and we had another one down near Pushier Bluff. But then after he built it, he's trying to make the basket makers get insurance on the piece of property that they're selling their baskets on.
Right.
But, you know, the people in Columbia, they keep fighting for it, you know, but then when you come down to the local, that's where the buck stops.
Where do you feel like the disconnect is? If Columbia is willing to fight for y'all, but the town is not, where do you feel like that disconnect is?
Well, a lot of the people in the town is not from this area.
Say that again.
So they don't know.
Yeah.
And we'll have to, you know, train them, teach them, you know, work with them, let them know how important this culture is to the town of Mount Pleasant. It shouldn't be the city of Charleston promoting it all the time.
Right. With everybody moving in here, 7 Mile community not being the same, when did you start seeing that change from like, okay, this is not the town that I recognize, this is not the place I grew up?
I don't know the people that around me. Some of my neighbors I do not know. And some of the rules that they put in place, you know, it's kind of hard to get used to.
Yeah.
When you have a town circling a community and you have to live by their rules.
What kind of rules are in place now that you're trying to get adjusted to?
Even just for sewer and water, you know. Simple things like that. You got to tie into the town of Mount Pleasant. I think it should be a choice. And I don't like subdivisions because you have to have an HOA and that's costing additional money.
Right.
And a lot of the houses in Mount Pleasant is not affordable anymore.
Right. So it's costing you money, more money to live in the place that you grew up in.
Yeah. And then if I want to cut off an acre or half an acre for one of my family, they want to put all this in place. They want to put a 50-foot road down the middle of your property, you know, to accommodate whoever else is coming in. You know, they put me through some changes just to get a piece cut off for my cousin, you know. You have to jump through hoops. When before you could just get a surveillance and get it squared off, you know. No, they stick their nose in to tell you how you have to do it.
Yeah.
The Manigos and the Campbell, they own all this. Once you cross over this water, it's the Campbells, and these are the Manigos, and we have some Moutries in here too.
All heirs property?
All heirs.
Okay. Okay. Is this land being like siphoned off? Do people come here trying to buy up the land?
Oh yes, every day. Every day you get a call or a note, you know, put on your door.
Yeah. So they come up to the house and put notes on the door?
Oh yeah, they're bold. We would like to buy your house.
What's the most amount of money you've heard someone being offered for land over here, you know?
No, because I don't even acknowledge it. When they come, because most of the time people tell that I have a sign saying property for sale.
Yeah.
You better get away from my door.
As the fight to retain land ownership wages on, new leadership, organizations, and programs are emerging to continue to preserve the history, culture, and communities that has built the city into America's favorite destination and holds the story of the people who not only built the nation, but have influenced the world.